Hey everyone, it's Taylor. Most people call me Trey. It's a bit more chill. And this story, a story I never thought I'd tell, starts on a Monday morning that seemed just like any other. I'm sitting at my desk sipping coffee, feeling pretty good. Earlier that morning, Jody, my wife, and I had this sweet, old-school couple moment. Jody and I met in high school, intense first love, tons of drama. We fought, we broke up, but we never really had the guts to stay apart forever. Eventually, we committed to each other, got married, built a life. My phone rings, snapping me out of my thoughts. I usually hate calls from unknown numbers, they're such a pain. But this time, when I see the screen, I freeze. It's Jody's work number. I get a little uneasy because she never calls me from work. "Hey babe," I answer, expecting Jody's sweet voice. But it's a deep male voice. "Hey, this isn't your wife, Taylor." Confused, I say, "Who is this?" The guy introduces himself as Michael Hamilton, Jody's coworker. He says he needs to talk to me because he has important info about my wife. "I think you need to know this. Can you meet me around noon today?" The request is vague but loaded, and my gut tells me to be wary. I try to get more details to understand what's going on, but Michael insists on meeting in person. "This isn't a joke," he stresses. "You can stop her from having an affair." My heart drops. I've thought of everything, but this is totally out of left field. My wife, the one I thought was my other half, is planning to meet up with another guy. My head is spinning. Around noon, I'm waiting in front of the Spike, a mix of anxiety and anger simmering inside. A tall guy in a gray suit and a blue tie approaches me, confirming his identity. It's Michael Hamilton. We walk together in silence toward the Central Park, where he starts to reveal the truth. "Jody and Stan Morrison, a coworker," Michael says, his eyes fixed ahead. "They've been having lunch together almost every day, talking like there's nothing wrong with it. And tomorrow night, they have a room booked at the Hilton, after they have dinner and go dancing." His words are like knives to my heart. Jody, the woman who's been through thick and thin with me, the one I trusted completely, is planning to spend the night with someone else. "How far do you think they're going to go?" I ask, my voice choked with emotion. Michael looks at me with sympathy. "She's planning to tell you. She believes you'll understand, that you love her enough to let her experience what it's like with another man. She thinks it won't affect your marriage." I'm hurting, I'm angry, and I'm completely bewildered. How could Jody be so naive? And why does Michael care so much about my situation? "Why are you telling me this?" I ask, meeting his gaze. "I've been married for 9 years, and my wife cheated on me. The legal system screwed me over way worse than her lover screwed her over. She and her boyfriend are living in the house I pay for, and my kids call him Dad. I'm stuck in a crappy apartment, eating beans and rice 5 nights a week. I see this as an opportunity to help someone else avoid what happened to me." We chat a little longer before he leaves to get back to work. I stay mulling over my marriage and my future. I conclude that if he's telling the truth, my marriage is over. It's terrifying that I could so easily consider the possibility of my marriage ending, just based on a relatively short conversation with a total stranger. But I think back to my own childhood and remember the pain my mom endured. My dad was a raging alcoholic and a serial cheater. He cheated multiple times, and he flaunted those relationships. He'd even taunt my mom about them. I asked her why she put up with it. I loved him. That was her answer. One time, when I was about 11, he brought me to the house where his current girlfriend was. They were somewhere inside the house, and I was in her living room with her dog. I got bored sitting there petting the dog, so I left and walked about a mile back home. When I get back home after my meeting with Michael, I can't stop thinking about the bitter memories of my childhood. That day when I told my mom about my dad taking me to that woman's house, she just nodded quietly. We only had one car, so she and I walked to get it. Mom never confronted my dad, she just silently drove me home. The next time my dad came home, she wouldn't let him in the door. A few days later, he was let back in, but not to make amends. He beat me with his belt for dropping a plate. Was that the real reason? No, I think it was because I dared to tell. Those memories never faded, and they make me feel like I could never stand for cheating, not even the thought of it. The pain my mom went through taught me the value of loyalty, and I'm not going to repeat her mistakes, not ever. Eventually, Mom found the strength to leave him, build a new and better life for her and me. She found someone else, someone who knew how to love her genuinely, and now they are so happy together. Jody and I are currently living in my mom and stepdad's house. It's ironic to think about that now, given our current circumstances. Now, facing this dark secret about Jody, I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. Do I confront her right away, or do I stay silent and observe? In my work, I know if you want to sell, you need to be proactive. You gotta get out there, talk to customers, anticipate their needs, and be persistent. But what about this? If what Michael said is true, maybe I don't even know the woman I married. And if that's the case, maybe she never really knew me either. I've always been clear about the pain cheating inflicted on my family, and I thought she knew and understood. Ultimately, I decide to be proactive. I need to be prepared for the worst. What if Jody actually goes through with this? I can't sit around and wait for my life to fall apart. I decide to hire a private investigator to get to the bottom of this. 30 minutes later, I'm in the office of a private investigator I picked randomly from a directory. After a conversation, he lays out his plan, takes my money, and promises to follow Jody's every move. As I leave the investigator's office, I feel slightly relieved, but I'm still a mess. How am I going to act tonight at home? When I get home, Jody is waiting, giving me her usual warm smile, running to hug and kiss me. My heart clenches. She's the wife I thought I'd have for the rest of my life. I've been wrestling with how to approach this. I can pretend everything is normal, make sure she doesn't suspect a thing, think her plan is secure. Or I can drop a hint about what I know. But if she really does go through with this, what's to stop her from doing it again in the future, when I'm not looking? I can't live with the possibility of that kind of looming threat. I decide to act normal. Dinner is almost ready. Jody just needs me to grill the pork chops. I do my best to stay calm, cook the food, and sit down at the table. Trying to act like nothing is wrong is harder than I thought. While I'm struggling to stay natural, Jody is completely carefree. Maybe, as Michael said, she's overconfident, or maybe she truly believes this fling won't ruin her family. Around 11 p.m., I head upstairs to get ready for bed. Jody's already asleep. I go to the bathroom, wash up, then get into bed next to her. But I can't sleep. Michael's words are looping in my head, a relentless cycle of suspicion, heartbreak, and anger. The next morning, Jody gets up before me, gets dressed, and silently walks down the stairs. A few minutes later, I wake up, get dressed, and go downstairs. But she's gone. We rarely leave the house without kissing goodbye, but she left this morning without a word. A sudden coldness between us, like a sign of something simmering beneath the surface. It's Friday, a perfect day for selling RVs, but I decide to take the morning off. I call my boss, then contact the dealership's lawyer, asking if he knows anyone who specializes in divorce. He introduces me to his wife, a well-known lawyer. But let me warn you, he says with a chuckle, she hates cheaters. If you are one, she might not take your case. I smile faintly, thank him, and head straight to see her. In her office, I tell her about my conversation with Michael Hamilton. Her first question is blunt, so, you're telling me you hired a private investigator and came to me based solely on what a stranger told you? Her question catches me off guard. But then I explain my family history, the story of my parents, and my intolerance for any kind of betrayal, big or small. Her eyes flicker with thought, and then she nods. Here's the thing, she says. If what Michael said is true, she seems overconfident and doesn't think your marriage will be damaged. She gives me a sharp look. It seems like she doesn't mind a one-night stand, because she believes it won't destroy anything. I laugh bitterly. There's no way I'm putting up with a one-night stand, even if it's just for a night, I say firmly. If Jody goes through with this tonight, I want all the paperwork finalized by Monday at the latest. The lawyer hesitates for a moment, but then commits to getting everything ready. All I need to do is let her know the location for serving Jody when the time is right. Around 1 p.m., I head back to the dealership, trying to focus on work with an older couple, Mr. and Miss Jacobson, retired but full of life. They've been married for almost 50 years, a number that fills me with both awe and sadness. How could they live together for so long and still love and respect each other? It's a complete contrast to what I'm going through. Mr. Jacobson wants to test drive the RV, and we take it out on the highway. He drives with such expertise and confidence that I sometimes feel like he has more pep in his step than me. While he and Mrs. Jacobson discuss buying the RV, I sit quietly, watching them interact, teasing each other. Their jokes and laughter warm me. They have exactly what I thought I would have with Jody, the connection, the joy in a marriage that lasts. As they finalize their decision to buy the RV, I have a sudden inspiration. I have a special feeling for them, and I decide to give them a discount. I call it the tray discount. A portion of my commission will be a gift just for them. It's time to go home. I get a call from the investigator, who confirms that everything is in place. At 5:30, I drive into the garage. Jody's car is still in its usual spot, but there's no sign of dinner being prepared in the house. No smell of food, no sounds from the kitchen. The feeling I have is a terrifying, cold calm. I place the packet of documents the investigator gave me on the mantelpiece, reminding myself to resist the urge to go looking for her. Instead, I settle into the armchair and wait, see what happens. I don't have to wait long. At exactly 5:45, Jody walks down the stairs. She's dressed to the nines, her eyes sparkling with excitement. She's even got a small suitcase. That must be the dress Michael Hamilton told me about. The outfit she bought for her special night. "Wow, you look great. What's the occasion?" I ask, keeping my voice light, like nothing is different. Jody smiles, confident, and says, "A coworker asked me out, and I figured it would be fun, so I decided to go." "Go out? You mean on a date?" I ask again, trying to stay calm, but my insides are boiling. "Yeah," she replies nonchalantly. "What kind of date are you going on?" "We thought since you're the only one I've ever been with, it would be fun if I tried it out with someone else. So I'm going to have dinner, dance, and spend the night at the hotel with him." The chill crawls from my stomach to my chest. I can't believe Jody is casually talking about this, and my flimsy composure crumbles. "Are you serious? You're really going to spend the night with someone else? What is we and us? When did this become a joint decision?" Jody shrugs, like it's no big deal. "Just a fun night. I'll be back tomorrow morning, and it'll be like it never happened. Maybe I'll learn some new tricks to keep you entertained." I shake my head. "No way. You can't do that, Jody. If you do, our marriage is over." Just then, a car horn blares outside. "That's him," Jody says matter-of-factly, starting to head toward the door. I step in front of her, blocking her path. "Please, Jody, don't do this," I plead. "I have to go," she giggles, trying to plant a kiss on my cheek. "I'll be back tomorrow afternoon, and you'll see nothing's changed. If you get in that car, there won't be anything to come back to." I lock eyes with her, hoping some spark of realization will ignite in them. She just laughs. "You're such a goofball. Have fun tonight thinking about what I'm enjoying. We'll be back to normal tomorrow when I get home. Sleep tight." She blows me a kiss and heads out the door, disappearing into the darkness. As Jody leaves, I'm left standing in the quiet house. Slowly, I walk over to the fireplace, shutting off the recorder I'd set up. It's time to act. I go upstairs, open her bedroom door, and start packing. There's no reason for her stuff to be in this house anymore. Every dress, every piece of jewelry, every personal document, everything goes in a bag and gets taken downstairs. Once I'm done, I open the garage door, move all of Jody's stuff into her car. I back the car out into the street and leave the keys on the driver's seat. Back in the house, I try to sleep, but I can't. I toss and turn all night. Eventually I get up, make some coffee, turn on the TV, and binge watch Hogan's Heroes, but I can't focus. The next morning I go to work early, even though my eyes are burning from lack of sleep. By 11 a.m., I've finished the deal with Mr. and Mrs. Jacobson. They drive off with their new RV and big smiles. It's a strange mix of emotions for me, their happiness juxtaposed with my own unraveling. I get home at 11:45 a.m. and find the locksmith waiting with new keys. I change the locks, get copies from the investigator, and watch the video summary of Jody's night from the moment she left the house. I just skim it, feeling like I've seen enough. At 12:30 p.m., the doorbell rings. I open the door and find Jody standing there, her face a mixture of surprise and confusion. "Hey babe, my key isn't working, and why's my car parked down the street?" I stand in the doorway staring at her coldly. "Your key doesn't work because you don't live here anymore. Your car is out there because it's convenient for you to leave." She tries to push past me, but I block her. "I told you last night if you left, you wouldn't have anything to come back to." Jody freezes, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You're not serious, that was just..." But I don't wait to hear the rest. I slam the door in her face. The banging on the door continues for a few minutes, then it stops. But soon the doorbell rings again. I open the door, and this time it's her sister, Judy. You're a jerk. My sister's crying at my house, and I want to know why. I stare at her, then slam the door without a word. But the bell keeps ringing. I'm out of patience. I open the door again and say in a harsh voice, "If you ring that bell one more time, I'm going to break your fingers." Judy hesitates, then drops to a pleading tone. "Just talk to me, please." I stand there for a few seconds before slowly opening the door and gesturing for Judy to come in. She steps inside, stopping to look at me for a moment, her eyes a mix of disappointment and confusion. "I thought you loved Jody. I can't believe you kicked her out of the house over a stupid disagreement," she says, her voice full of reproach. I furrow my brow. A stupid disagreement? Judy sighs. "She told me you wouldn't let her go out last night, and so you sent her away." I shake my head, replying bitterly, "Oh, she's right about part of the disagreement. She wanted to go out, and I didn't want her to go, but what she didn't tell you is who she was going with. You know, it wasn't me. It was a coworker." "You're kidding." Judy plops down on the sofa, her expression shocked. "And did she tell you their plan was to have dinner, dance, and spend the night in a hotel room?" Judy widens her eyes and shakes her head, as if she can't believe what she's hearing. "You're not serious. You're making this up, right?" I reply in a flat, emotionless tone, "If you don't believe me, here." I press play on the recording from last night. Jody's voice fills the room, her casual description of the night's plans as if nothing is being hidden. Judy listens, then sighs and hangs her head. "I had no idea." "Yeah, me neither, until last night," I say with a bitter chuckle. She looks up, hesitant. "What are you going to do?" "Divorce," I respond definitively. "Oh no, is there any chance of salvaging this?" She looks at me, her eyes pleading. I shake my head. "Judy, there is no chance. I'm not forgiving this or forgetting it. This marriage is over, period." She nods, silent, lost in thought for a moment before getting up and heading toward the door. Before she goes out, she turns back to look at me, as if wanting to say something. But she just purses her lips and leaves. I close the door behind her, feeling a sharp pain but also a strange sense of serenity. All of Saturday night and all day Sunday, I'm in a fog of sadness and anger. I barely eat, just making a couple of grilled cheese sandwiches and refilling my gin and tonic. Self-pity washes over me in waves, but I try to stop myself from thinking about Jody. By nightfall, there's a knock on the door. It's Judy. She stares at me defiantly. "You said you'd break my fingers if I rang the bell again." So, I knocked. She steps inside, trying to maintain her composure. "I spent all day talking to Jody. You were right. She confessed everything to me. But there's something you don't know, nothing actually happened." I raise an eyebrow, gesturing for her to sit down, then sit across from her. "You mean nothing happened at all?" She said after he picked her up, "They went to the hotel. They had champagne while ordering dinner, and by the time the food came, they were both pretty drunk. They went up to the room intending to do it, but they were too intoxicated, so they just passed out. Jody woke up first, realized it was wrong, and asked him to take her home." "Oh, that's a good story," I reply, not trying to hide the skepticism in my voice. "You don't believe her, do you?" "I believe they spent days, maybe weeks, planning this date. They had lunch together, talked and planned every detail. In the process, they grew closer, sharing things she should have only shared with me. They planned a night together to do it. No matter what happened, the betrayal started long ago." Judy just sits there, looking at me as if she doesn't know what to say. "You don't believe her at all, do you?" "No, I don't." "And you won't forgive her, even though nothing actually happened?" "Not in this lifetime." Judy nods silently. "Once this is all over, can we still be friends?" "Jody and I are getting a divorce. If things get messy, I'm not sure you'll want to be friends with me anymore." Judy looks down, dejected. "Probably not." She touches my cheek lightly, plants a quick kiss on my left cheek, and turns away without another word. I watch her leave, a hollowness settling inside me. By Monday morning, I call the lawyer and let her know I want to move forward with the divorce. I ask her to serve Jody with the divorce papers at her work. I try to work all day, but my mind keeps wandering. Around 4 in the afternoon, my phone rings. It's a familiar number, Jody's office. I pick up. Trey Taylor. "Good afternoon, Mr. Taylor. My name is Michael Hamilton. I thought you might want to know that an interesting event happened here today." "Oh yeah." "Yes, sir. Your wife was just served with the divorce papers. She fainted immediately after reading them. The paramedics had to take her to the hospital. As she was passing out, she dropped some papers, and Stan Morrison picked them up. After glancing at them, he almost fainted too. If it wasn't so serious, it would be funny, but I don't find anything humorous about ruining another marriage. I'll update you as needed. You do that, I reply, hanging up. Before I can put the phone down, it rings again. It's Judy. Trey, Jody's been taken to the hospital. Oh, really? I keep my voice steady. I thought you might want to know. No, I don't care about her or her health anymore. Judy's voice cracks. Trey, are you really that cold? I chuckle dryly. Whatever coldness I have is courtesy of your sister. I told you yesterday this was going to get messy, and this is just the beginning. The next few weeks unfold as expected. Jody repeatedly tries to contact me, but I don't pick up. Her parents call, trying to get me to change my mind, but I flat out refuse. My mom spends a lot of time with me, trying to help me through these turbulent emotions, but I just shrug and tell her I'm fine. As for Jody, she's at the office, but she's quiet and hardly speaks to anyone, especially Stan Morrison. Michael Hamilton calls me nearly every day, updating me on the situation with a blatant sense of satisfaction. Eventually, the lawyers set up a meeting. It's the first time I've seen Jody since I kicked her out. She looks thinner, like she's lost weight, her eyes lack their usual brightness. But what surprises me most is Judy's presence. Jody's lawyer asks if I'm okay with Judy being there. I look at her, raise an eyebrow, and ask, "Are you sure you want to be here?" "I'm here for Jody," Judy replies, her voice soft but firm. "No, that's not what I asked." Judy just nods, "But I need to be here." I shrug and tell my lawyer I don't mind. Jody sits down, and everyone else takes their seats. Her lawyer starts, her voice grave. My client, Mrs. Taylor, vehemently denies the allegation of adultery. She wants to dismiss the divorce and work towards salvaging her marriage. She's open to counseling if it helps. My lawyer and I exchange glances, both giving a cold smile. My lawyer speaks up. "If your client wasn't actually having an affair, maybe Mrs. Taylor wants to elaborate on her actions that evening?" Jody clears her throat, launching into her story with confidence and composure. "I'd be happy to. That night I left the house when my polite friend came to pick me up." My lawyer interrupts, "What's his name?" Jody hesitates, "Stan. But his name isn't important. We didn't do anything wrong, so we don't need to involve him in this." I keep my emotions in check and let her continue. Jody recounts nearly verbatim what Judy told me earlier. The champagne, the dinner, more champagne, the trip to the hotel room, and their drunken stupor that prevented them from doing anything before they both passed out. Then she laments my misunderstanding, expresses remorse, and pleads for forgiveness so they can rebuild their family. I glance at Judy, who's listening intently, nodding in agreement. My lawyer's voice remains cold. "So let's assume that this story is true and that no sexual intercourse took place. Was there any physical intimacy during the evening? Any holding of hands, kissing, touching?" Jody answers quickly, "Absolutely not," she says with conviction, and Judy nods in agreement. Right then, I pick up the remote sitting on the coffee table in front of me and press the button. A screen descends from the ceiling, and there on the screen is Jody walking out of the house and towards Stan Morrison's car. Morrison rounds the car, opens the door for her, and they exchange a long, passionate kiss before getting into the car and driving away. I hit pause. "Lee number one," I say, my eyes locked on Jody. The room is silent, tension crackling in the air. Jody's face turns pale, and Judy just sits there, staring at her sister. I explained to Judy and everyone else the plan I and the investigator had made. We'd been gathering evidence from the moment Morrison picked Jody up, recording every move they made throughout the evening, even when they went into the hotel room. My lawyer chimes in, "You also said there was no physical intimacy. Is that correct?" Jody hesitates but ultimately nods. I hit play again. The screen switches to Jody and Morrison entering the hotel dining room. Morrison's hand is on Jody's butt, and he even gives it a little squeeze. Clearly, they're very comfortable with each other. "Lie number two," I say, turning back to look at Jody. This time, her lawyer tries to look busy, and Judy stares intently at her fingernails, refusing to look up. The video continues, showing Jody and Morrison ordering a bottle of champagne, kissing, and chatting. They stand up, head toward the elevator, and before they finish their first glass, they're heading up to their room. The next scene is clear as day. 4 minutes after stepping into the room, Jody is on her knees, going down on Morrison. At that moment, Jody screams, bolts out of the conference room, and Judy rushes after her. I hit pause, leaving a heavy silence in the air. Her lawyer quickly gathers her papers, saying hastily, "It appears my client may not have accurately remembered all of the events of that evening. I will discuss this further with her and get back to you." She shoves the papers into her briefcase and rushes after the two sisters. My lawyer and I chat for a few minutes, then I head back to the RV dealership. Just as I'm about to close up, Judy walks in. She glances around the room, slowly approaching where I'm sitting. I don't bother getting up, just look up at her. Judy stops in front of me and asks softly, "Can I sit?" "Suit yourself," I reply, my voice devoid of warmth. After a moment of silence, she speaks. "You knew all along, didn't you?" "Knew what?" I ask, though I know exactly what she means. "When I came on Saturday the first week, you knew everything about them, didn't you? You knew they'd spent the night together." "That's right. I watched the video before you came. And let me be clear, they didn't just sleep. They had sex, Judy. She's my wife, and she let another guy do that to her." Judy sighs, her voice cracking. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I'm not sure. Maybe I was hoping she'd confess and agree to the divorce so I could handle things a little more smoothly, save her family some face. I really liked her parents." Judy looks down, silent. Just then, my phone rings. I pick it up. Trey Taylor. Michael Hamilton's voice comes through the receiver. "It's Michael Hamilton, Mr. Taylor. I was off yesterday, but I thought you'd want to know that your wife just quit her job without cleaning out her desk." "Thanks, Michael. Let me know if there's anything else." I hang up, just about to get back to the conversation when the intercom buzzes. "Trey, you have a call on line 6. I pick up and spend about 15 minutes talking to a potential client. During that time, Judy sits quietly, unmoving. When I end the call, our eyes meet again. Judy's voice is low. "She's gone, Trey." I frown. "What do you mean? She died?" "No," Judy shakes her head. "She packed her things and left. She asked me to tell her parents she's sorry for disappointing them." I chuckle. She disappointed more than just her parents. Judy nods slightly, the air between us growing heavy. Finally, I speak. "Listen, Judy, I have a lot of work to do, so if—" "Oh, of course," Judy says, awkwardly standing up. "I should go." She gives me one last look, turns away, and exits the room. That night, I pull out the copy of the video the investigator made. My lawyer kept one for the deposition, and I kept this one. I pop the disc into the player and settle into the armchair. I only saw it briefly during the deposition. This is the second time. The video fast-forwards to the last scene one stopped on during the deposition. Jody kneeling down, totally focused on giving Morrison satisfaction. I sit there, coldly observing the scene, Morrison holding her head tightly, his thrusts deep and relentless, as if there's nothing but raw pleasure involved. Then they start undressing without any hesitation or restraint. They're naked in front of each other, and he pushes her forcefully onto the bed. Then they go at it without affection, only a primal need. Watching that, I realized there were moments of love between Jody and me before, but between her and Morrison, there's only lust. No love. No tenderness. Just a need to possess each other. It's a brutal, painful realization. I sink into the armchair, trying to control my emotions. One part of me wants to scream in agony over the betrayal by the woman I loved. Another part wants to rage, to wipe away all trace of her. My mind is hazy, chaotic. I drift off to sleep in a state of confusion and fatigue. Another 2 weeks pass. My lawyer tries to schedule another meeting with Jody and her lawyer, but there's no answer. Jody has vanished without a trace. Month after month passes, and I don't hear from her. Every now and then I run into Judy or Jody's parents, and I ask them if they've heard from her. But the answer is always no. My lawyer advises me to wait a few more months, then I can file for divorce on grounds of abandonment. I cancel our joint credit cards, split our bank account, but she doesn't touch the money left behind. Then one day, my phone rings. Trey Taylor. Michael Hamilton's voice comes through. "Good morning, Mr. Taylor." "Michael Hamilton, you remember me?" "Of course. What's up?" "I have some news I think you'll want to hear. Remember my divorce, my ex-wife living in my house with her lover?" "Right, and your kids were living with them, right?" "Yes, but not anymore. I just moved back in with my kids." "Really? What happened?" Michael laughs. Turned out the lover was a con man. He convinced my ex to steal money from her company, and now they're both in jail. I burst out laughing. Talk about shooting yourself in the foot. So, are you still working at the same place? Still there. Actually, that's why I called. A few weeks ago, Stan Morrison started making some interesting calls. And today, I heard him talking to Jody. I'm a little surprised. Are you sure? Positive. I heard him say I miss you, Jody, too. Do you know where she is? Michael laughs. Well, I did write down the number she called him from. How did you get it? Easy. After the call ended, Morrison left his phone on the desk and went into his boss's office. I got close, checked his call history, and copied down Jody's number. Piece of cake. Brilliant, Hamilton. Give me the number. Hamilton recites the number. The area code is in South Florida. I immediately relay the information to my lawyer and prepare myself. After all these months of waiting, I have a lead. That afternoon I sit staring at the number on the paper. Now there's only one thing left to do. The final call to end it all. Hello? Hello, Judy. It's Trey. Judy's voice is flat. Trey, what do you want? I need to ask you something. Do you or your family know anyone in Florida? Florida? Why are you asking? Because I think Jody is there. She sighs. Why do you care where she is anymore? I need to get a divorce, Judy. To speed things up, she needs to be prepared to sign the papers. I need to know where she is. Judy is silent for a moment. When were you going to ask? Ask what? Where she lives in Florida? I reply, I don't need to ask. My lawyer is looking for her right now. Judy hesitates. Actually, I can save you a little hassle. Jody's living in Fort Lauderdale. Judy's information catches me off guard. Why are you telling me this now? She's silent for a long time before suddenly asking, Trey, can I ask a personal question? Don't answer if you don't want to. Ask away. Have you ever experienced a situation that wasn't what you expected? An experience that was intense and unexpected, completely out of control. I'm silent, unsure how to respond. Judy nods, as if she doesn't need an answer. Let me tell you this, sometimes during sex, people search for something deeper, something more special. Sometimes it's just a light slap, a pull of the hair, or a feeling that transcends what we call normal. Those things amplify the experience. I look at Judy, surprised. Her eyes aren't locked on mine anymore, as if they're lost in a distant memory. The air in the room suddenly becomes thick, almost stifling. Have you ever heard of someone passing out from an orgasm? Judy asks abruptly, her voice contemplative. Passing out? I shake my head, utterly bewildered. Jody did, I say, my voice low but firm. Judy's eyes widen. What? You're saying Jody passed out? Yes, in the video I have. She actually passed out for a few seconds after she came. Judy leans back in her chair, her breath catching. Holy crap, are you sure? I don't respond, just sip my drink and lose myself in thought. After a few minutes of silence, Judy breaks the tension. Trey? Yeah? Can I see that? The part where she passed out? Just thinking about it makes me feel curious. She pauses, a soft smile creeping across her lips. Just talking to you about it has gotten me so excited. Hearing those words from Judy, I'm swept away by a strange wave of emotion. I never thought I'd hear this from her, someone I've known my entire life. It starts deep in my chest and spreads throughout my body, a feeling that's both unusual and exhilarating. It's been over 3 months since Jody left, and for the entire time I felt empty, avoiding intimacy. I look at Judy, a slight smile playing on my lips. I think that can be arranged. She looks at me, a knowing curve to her lips. I get home, exhausted and weighed down by thoughts. I lie in bed, trying to push the chaos in my head aside, but every time I close my eyes, I see Judy, someone I never would have expected just a few weeks ago. Over the next few days, Judy and I talk frequently. She gives me Jody's address in Florida and lets me know that she's spoken to Jody about the divorce proceedings. The papers are sent, but things get a bit more delicate between Judy and me. We decide to go out for dinner on Friday night, then head back to my place to watch the video. However, Judy quickly makes it clear that if I'm looking for some kind of revenge that night, I should forget it. I would never sleep with my brother-in-law, Trey. Period. On Thursday morning, I get a call from Michael Hamilton. "Hello, Mr. Taylor. I have some news for you. Stan Morrison quit his job today. No notice, no explanation. He just cleaned out his desk, told his boss he was moving to Florida, and left." "Oh, that's interesting. Thanks, Michael. Hey, how are things with you?" Hamilton chuckles. "My ex-wife pleaded guilty to theft. She's going to get a light sentence, and her boyfriend is going to do some serious time. Hope he enjoys his girlfriend treatment in there." We both laugh. After the call with Hamilton, I called Judy right away. "Hey, I was just thinking about you," Judy says when she picks up. "I just heard that Stan Morrison is about to move to Fort Lauderdale too. Did you know about this for a while?" I ask, my voice hardening. There's silence on the other end. "Judy, how long have you known?" She hesitates. "Trey, How long?" "A few days." "I want to know how many times they've seen each other since Jody moved there." Again, there's a long pause. "4 times, she sighs. "She came up here twice, and he's been down there twice." Anger boils over. "4 times, Judy. You knew all this, and you let her come back and talk to me after she's still seeing him. You think that's okay?" "Trey, Jody's my sister, I don't listen anymore. I end the call immediately. My phone rings again, Judy calling back repeatedly, but I ignore her. Sitting motionless in my office, I think about what I've just heard, my insides churning. Eventually, I leave my office and head over to the maintenance area to talk to a mechanic, a close friend and the only one at the dealership who knows my story. We sit down at a wooden table outside, and I tell him everything. "You want me to stop him from going to Florida?" he asks, squinting. I laugh. "No need. Those two aren't worth me getting involved in any legal trouble. I just want to get out of it all." He nods. "If you need anything, just say the word. I can arrange it." We talk for a while longer before the intercom buzzes. "Trey, you have a call on line 4. Back in my office, I pick up. "Trey, please don't hang up," Judy pleads, her voice trembling. I silently hang up, then go to the front desk and ask them to block all my calls for the day. When I get home, I see Judy's car parked out front. She's right there, rapping on the door as I come in through the garage. The knocks are patient but insistent. I reluctantly open the door, standing in the doorway. "Trey, let me explain." I don't wait for her to finish, slamming the door in her face. I go into the kitchen, heat up a frozen plate of spaghetti, and eat it in silence. By 10 p.m., I'm exhausted and fall asleep. The next morning, when I get to the dealership, I find Judy waiting outside. Maybe she thinks that at work, I'll be more controlled, that I won't create a scene. She's wrong. She grabs my hand, trying to hold me back. "Damn it, Trey, just listen. You don't have anything to say that I want to hear. But I do have something to say to you." I shake her hand off, my voice low but sharp. "You let her come back and talk to me knowing she was still seeing him, over and over again, and you weren't going to tell me. All 3 of you can rot in hell." I leave Judy standing there and walk right inside. Whether I meant to or not, the exchange is loud enough for our colleagues to hear. I know it'll be all over the dealership soon, but I don't care anymore. That afternoon, my mom calls and invites me for dinner. I agree, and when I arrive, she's made my favorite Italian dish. The meal is quiet until my mom speaks up. I talked to Judy today. I put down my fork, cutting her off. "Mom, one more word about that family and I'm out of here." She takes a deep breath. "Trey, listen to me. There's something you don't know." "I know enough. Jody cheated, and I'm going to divorce her." Mom shakes her head slightly. "Okay, you can divorce her. But what are you going to do about the baby?" I freeze. "What are you talking about? You can't believe that, can you?" Mom looks at me serious. "Trey, she's pregnant. I talked to her myself when she came here." I feel the world spin. "She came here, and you didn't tell me." "She begged me not to say anything to you. She needed more time." I jump to my feet, anger erupting. "You listened to her instead of your own son? I'm the one who was betrayed." My mom looks at me, trying to hold back a sigh. "Trey, this is a different world. Everybody makes mistakes, and maybe you should try to forgive." "Forgive? Forgive the person who stomped on my love and trust." I stand up, anger burning in my gut. "Mom, I'm never going back. Never." I storm out of my mom's house, my head full of questions. She's spent her whole life putting up with my dad's betrayals and lies, and now she's telling me to forgive Jody? I love my mom, but her naivety and gullibility are unbelievable. She even once bought a used encyclopedia from a street vendor in the era of smartphones and the internet, but asking me to forgive Jody is too much. I drive past my house, then just keep going. Eventually I end up at the dealership. I have a key, so I go in and find the couch in the employee lounge, hoping to calm down a bit. But the storm of emotions inside me isn't easy to quell. I toss and turn until almost 5 a.m., then wake up at 10:30. A coworker tells me that the boss wants to see me. My back aches from sleeping on the couch, and I'm dragging my feet into the office. The boss greets me with a slight smile. "Trey, you need a break, and I think I've got a way for you to get one. Remember the Jacobsons? The older couple who bought the green Prevost a few months ago?" "Yes. They were in Vancouver last week, but Mr. Jacobson had a heart attack. He's going to be okay, but the coach needs to be brought back. They've asked you to bring it back." I smile faintly, a sense of escape washing over me. "Sounds good. When do I leave?" "Tomorrow. Janie will book your flight and just use the company card for all your expenses. The Jacobsons are in no hurry, so if it were me, I'd take about 10 days for the trip." When I get to Vancouver, I head straight to the hospital. Mr. Jacobson is in bed, wired up to machines, and Mrs. Jacobson is trying to make him comfortable while he's complaining about being bothered. They smile at each other in simple happiness, just being together. I stand there, a rare warmth filling my heart. It's been a long time since I've felt a sense of peace like this. Mrs. Jacobson sees me and beams. "Trey, it's so good to see you." She hugs me. "Hey Trey, how was the flight?" Mr. Jacobson booms. "Be quiet, Robert. You know what the doctor said." Mrs. Jacobson scolds him, her eyes narrowed. She pats my arm. "He can't argue with me now, it's a doctor's order." She winks playfully. We sit and chat, but then a young woman walks in with 2 small suitcases. It's Darla, the Jacobsons' granddaughter. She's about my age, with an approachable girl next door kind of beauty. I nod hello, but she just gives me a cold stare, then turns away. Mrs. Jacobson looks at me and explains, "Darla will drive you to the RV park to get the coach ready to go." Darla frowns slightly, about to object, but Mrs. Jacobson gently interrupts her. "Darla, don't worry. You should go home. Trey will be fine." We head to the RV park, but Darla barely talks. She's sullen and cold, occasionally muttering something under her breath, but she never turns to look at me. When we get to the coach, I want to start getting things ready for our departure the next morning, but she's already got the keys to the coach and heads inside. I go in to ask for the keys back. She throws them toward me without meeting my eyes. "What's your problem?" I ask, bending down to pick up the keys. She doesn't even bother to answer. I turn away, silently insert the key, hook the family's car to the coach, and double-check everything. Then I head inside to grab some beer to relax. Darla is standing in front of the fridge. "Any beer? Or maybe something to eat?" She slams the fridge door, heads straight into the bedroom, and shuts the door without another word. Her attitude is the final straw. From Jody to Judy to my own mom, and now this stranger, everyone's getting on my nerves. Anger flares up inside me. 10 days my ass. I mutter. If not for her attitude, I would have been planning to take a break and enjoy the trip. But not anymore. I'm getting out of here as soon as possible. I disconnect the power and water, get in the driver's seat, start the engine, plug Houston into the GPS, and take off at 6 p.m. By 8 p.m., we've crossed the border and cleared customs. Darla stomps out and goes straight into the bedroom without a word. With a full tank of gas, I floor it, and the coach keeps on rolling. All night, I only stop twice for coffee and snacks, then keep driving. By 7 a.m., I'm in Burley, Idaho, and finally feeling exhausted. Darla emerges from the bedroom and takes a seat in the passenger seat, staring out the windshield. After a few minutes, she speaks, her voice annoyed. "I'm hungry. Is there anything to eat?" Her words remind me of her response the night before when I asked about food. I stare straight ahead, gritting my teeth. "I'm not your goddamn maid." Then I hit the gas. Darla stares at me, then quietly gets up, returns to the bedroom, and slams the door. Around 9 p.m., after 18 hours of driving, I'm forced to pull over at a rest stop. My body is spent, and I head into the coach's bathroom to relieve myself. When I return, I see Darla opening the coach door and getting ready to step out. "If you step out of this coach, you're not getting back in because I'm leaving right now," I say, my hand on the release button. Darla hesitates for a moment, then rushes into the bedroom. I chuckle. Nothing surprises me more than this girl's stubbornness. By noon, the fatigue has almost taken over my ability to drive. Driving 18 hours straight is a real test, so I pull into another rest stop, park between two big rigs, and lay down on the couch. I'm out cold in seconds. I wake up 5 hours later, find the coach moving, and hear the engine roaring. I sit up, realizing that Darla is in the driver's seat, handling the coach like a pro. I observe her for a moment, realizing she knows exactly what she's doing. Mr. Jacobson must have taught her to drive very well. Seeing that everything's under control, I brew a cup of coffee and take a seat in the passenger seat, taking a sip. For the next 2 hours, neither of us says a word. The silence is comfortable. Finally, I decide to break the tense atmosphere to talk about the fuel situation. "We should stop at the next station to refuel," I say, trying to be friendly. But I'm met with silence. I try again, "Sorry, but I think we need gas." Darla cuts me off, her voice flat. "I took care of that while you were snoring." I have to admire her. Her self-sufficiency is impressive. I don't say another word, go back to the couch, and drift back to sleep. We arrive in Dumas, Texas, around 10 p.m. Darla parks, gets up, and heads straight for the galley. She makes herself a sandwich, grabs a soda from the fridge, then disappears into the bedroom without a word. That's my cue to get in the driver's seat. After fixing myself 2 sandwiches and brewing some coffee, I hit the gas, heading toward Houston. The next morning, I pull the coach into the dealership in Houston, feeling weary from 2 days without a decent night's sleep. As soon as I park, I get out, feeling like my whole body is sore, like I've been awake for a week. I barely make it to the bathroom before I see the Jacobsons' coach rolling out of the dealership. The driver's side window rolls down, and unmistakable, there's a middle finger salute coming from Darla. I chuckle, giving her a subtle middle finger salute back, before heading into the lounge. Before I can even sit down, I feel the couch beckoning me, and I can't resist. I crash into it, only waking up at 3 p.m. There's a note on the desk saying the boss wants to see me as soon as I wake up. I head into his office, my back still aching, fatigue lingering. The boss looks at me from behind his desk, a smirk on his lips. "Trey, I think you need to get some more rest so everyone here can have their lounge back." I yawn loudly. "I got a call from Mrs. Jacobson this morning. It was an interesting conversation," he says, contemplative. I shrug, sinking into the chair. "Oh, really?" "Yes. She wanted to know how you managed to get her granddaughter home safely without driving her completely insane." "What?" I ask, surprised. Darla's a bit of a handful, apparently. She made the whole Jacobson family miserable during the trip. Their grandson even left early, couldn't take it anymore. They didn't want her coming with them. But they also didn't want to leave her behind. The boss laughs. I half joke, I can understand their grandson. Every time I grip the wheel, I imagine my hand around her neck, and it felt so good I didn't want to stop. The boss laughs. Anyway, the Jacobsons were happy to know she got home safe. They're going to have the coach serviced, but they're not looking to sell it. In fact, they're considering living in it full-time. Finally, I go home, ready for a long sleep. After 2 days of sleep deprivation, I decide to check my phone to see if I've missed any calls. But my phone is gone. I immediately call my boss and ask him to check the coach in the lounge, but it's nowhere to be found. It's vanished. Worried about missed customer calls, I head to the dealership to handle some messages. In the middle of the afternoon, while I'm heading back to the lounge to get coffee, I see her, Darla, walking into the lounge. I sigh, turn around, and start to leave, when the PA system crackles to life. "Trey, please come to my office, now." When I step into the office, the boss is sporting a mischievous grin. "I think you remember Darla Jacobson," he says, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "Miss Jacobson is here to return your phone, which you seem to have forgotten on her grandparents' coach." The 3 short days on the road with Darla felt like an eternity. When I get home, I shower, shave, and sleep for almost 30 hours. But at some point, I know I need to get back to reality, to the issues I left behind. The first thing is to find my phone. I rummage through all my bags from the Vancouver trip, but nothing. I call my boss and ask him to check the coach in the lounge, but it's nowhere to be found. Gone. Worried about missed customer calls, I head to the dealership, start responding to messages. By mid-afternoon, I've tackled most of the work. But as I'm heading back to the lounge to grab coffee, she's there, Darla Jacobson, walking in. My fatigue and irritation surge back. Not wanting any more confrontation, I turn and head toward the service area, hiding there for a while. Then the PA system crackles, "Trey, please come to my office." I take a sip of coffee, waiting a little longer. Finally I knock, step inside, and see Darla sitting next to my boss. He looks at me with that mischievous smile. "Miss Jacobson has come to return your phone. Seems you left it on her grandparents' coach." Just then, his phone rings, and he gestures for us to step out. I follow Darla, keeping a respectful distance. She turns to face me, my phone nestled in her hand. "That bad, huh?" She smirks, almost a smile. Then, without waiting for a response, she walks to a nearby desk and sets the phone down. "That bad," I reply flatly, taking the phone and turning to go, but her voice stops me. "Trey," I turn back, seeing sincerity in her eyes. "I listened to a few of your messages. I know you've got a lot going on. I'm sorry for acting the way I did." I hesitate, surprised and bewildered. Briefly I reply, "Thanks," then turn back towards the service area. Less than 10 minutes later, a loud crash comes from outside the dealership. An employee runs in to report, "Trey, the silver car that got hit out there belongs to the girl who was just in your office." My heart leaps. I rush outside. It's Darla, sitting in the car, blood streaming down her forehead, her arm looking broken. She looks up at me, manages a weak smile. "You always seem to meet me at my best, don't you?" Then she passes out. An ambulance arrives soon after. I hear them talking about her condition and the hospital address. Back in the office, I call the Jacobsons, assuring them that Darla has only minor injuries and is stable at the hospital. Over the phone, Mrs. Jacobson relays the message to her husband. I hear him sigh, jokingly saying, "Broken arm? It should have been her neck. Maybe that would have changed her." After giving her husband the proper scolding, Mrs. Jacobson asks if I've called Darla's parents and let them know. She gives me their number, and I do just that. Afterward, I remember my phone. There are 54 messages, half from my mom, the rest from Judy, potential customers, and one from Michael Hamilton. I call the potential customers and schedule 4 appointments in the next few days. I ignore the rest of the messages. I leave work at 5 p.m. and head home. The hospital the paramedics mentioned isn't near my place, but I find myself there anyway. I check with the information desk and find out her room number is 646. I head that way. When I walk in, she already has visitors, her parents. "Trey, meet my parents. Mom, Dad, this is Trey Taylor. Trey, these are my parents, Ralph and Joanne Jacobson." "It's nice to meet you, Trey. Darla couldn't stop talking about your trip," her mom says. I bet she didn't, I think. "How could you stand being on that little bus with her for 2 days? She'd drive anyone crazy," her dad says. "Dad, it wasn't a bus. It was a motorhome." "It was a bus. A fancy one, but still a bus." "Don't mind him, Trey. Are you okay?" "I'm okay, except for a broken arm and a few stitches." "Right, well, I gotta go. I just thought I'd drop by. Take care of yourself." "Thanks for coming by." "Oh, Trey," her dad says, "thank you for calling us and letting us know." "No problem. Goodbye." I go home and debate whether to call my mom. It's a short debate. The negative side wins because I don't see the positive side. And so, for the next 3 weeks, I'm in a sort of standoff. My mom and Judy have tried calling several times, and I've ignored them. Even my stepdad called. I talked to him, but I ended the call when he tried to put my mom on the phone. Single life is starting to take shape for me. The divorce papers have been served to Jody, and she signed them in bold red ink, in a strangely showy way, as if to confirm that she's committed to leaving my life. If she is actually pregnant, no one is mentioning it. 2 more months, and I'll be completely free. The thought of being single brings a mixture of relief and unease. How long has it been since I felt truly free? Since I've had to endure long periods without romance, without intimacy? A strange urge rises inside me. I tell myself I need a mental break and decide to go out to dinner. But just as I'm getting dressed, my phone rings. Trey Taylor. "Hello, Trey. It's Dottie Jacobson." "Hi, Dottie. It's great to hear from you. How are you? How's Robert?" Oh, call me Dottie. Robert's doing great, thanks for asking. He's excited about the next trip. He's thinking of Colorado, but I'm a little nervous about driving those steep mountain passes. What do you think? Just engage the engine brake when going downhill and keep your speed, he'll be fine. Just make sure he doesn't go too fast. Dottie laughs. That's exactly what he said. Guess I'll have to take some Valium when we get there. We both laugh. Dottie continues. Oh, the reason I called is to invite you to a barbecue to celebrate Robert's recovery. Friday at 6 p.m. Come on over and bring your wife. We'd love to meet her. I hesitate. Dottie and Robert certainly don't know about my divorce. Thanks, Dottie. I'd love to come. See you then. It's a great week at work. I sell 3 RVs, one of them a luxury coach that a famous country star just sold back to the dealership. The commissions are a welcome boost after all the personal turmoil. By Friday night, I'm driving to the Jacobsons' estate, arriving right at 6 p.m. The Jacobsons' place is sprawling and gorgeous. A valet greets me and parks my car, my first experience with valet parking at a private party, like a luxury hotel. Dottie meets me at the back patio and engulfs me in a hug as soon as she sees me. It's so good to see you, Trey. Where's your wife? I explain my marital status. She keeps me at arm's length, then shakes her head sympathetically. If your wife walked away from a guy like you, she's crazy. Then, she chuckles and links her arm with mine. You know, Trey, there are some pretty nice girls here who'd love to meet a guy like you. Her words make me smile, but to be honest, I know the nice girls Dottie's talking about are all the daughters of powerful families. I'm happy to hang out for a bit, but deep down I know I don't belong in this flashy world. I'm just finishing a barbecue beef sandwich and a beer, about to find Dottie and Robert to say goodbye, when I see Darla emerge from a corner of the patio, looking annoyed as she walks away from a group of people. I guess I should have known she'd be here. I'm about to disappear when Darla spots me. Come on, Trey. She grabs my arm and pulls me toward the house. Surprised, I let her lead me without protest. She opens the door to the library, this house has a library, and steps inside. That guy is such a jerk. He said I have an attitude problem and need help, Darla fumes. I shrug. Maybe I should head out before you kick me out for agreeing with him. He didn't have to say that in front of everyone. Darla replies, her eyes sharp as knives. Someone should have said it a long time ago, I say casually. Darla flops down on a chair, looking tired and embarrassed, like a kid who's been scolded and has no fight left in her. I stand there, trying to keep my cool. How's your arm? I ask. It itches like crazy under the cast. She holds up a tiny scratching tool. This thing keeps me alive. Well, I gotta go. Trey? Yeah? If I promise to behave, will you go to dinner with me? Her voice softens, as if this is the first invitation she's genuinely wanted an answer to. I stay silent for a few seconds before I respond. Darla, I'm about to get a divorce. My life is pretty stressful right now, and if we hang out too much, it'll probably make things worse. So I don't think that's a good idea. With that, I turn and leave, leaving her in the library. On Saturday morning, my mom comes to the door. I open it, and she steps inside, her face more serious than usual. Honey, I've been thinking a lot, and I understand, she starts, her voice slow but sure. There are some things in a marriage you can't compromise on, and fidelity is one of them. I've thought about what I went through with your father, and nobody deserves to endure that. I'm sorry for encouraging you to take Jody back. I was selfish, thinking only about the baby and the possibility of grandchildren. Please forgive me. I don't say anything, just wrap my arms around my mom. At this point, there's nothing more to say about the past. We sit and talk for another hour, then she leaves, looking more at peace. By mid-Monday morning, my phone rings. Trey Taylor? Good morning, Trey. It's Michael Hamilton. I have an update. He started calling me by my nickname recently, and I don't mind. Okay, what's the update? Stan Morrison just called and asked for his job back. They said no. I laugh. Thanks, Michael. Just a few hours later, the Jacobsons' motorhome pulls into the lot, parking right in front of the building. I'm busy with a client, so I can't go out to greet them, but through the window I see Darla inside the coach, looking like she's waiting for something. When the customer leaves, I buzz the motorhome, and Darla opens the door, a smile on her face. Hey, come on in, she says softly. I step inside and am greeted by the rich aroma of baked lasagna. 2 glasses of Chianti are waiting on the counter, and Darla hands me one, raising hers in a toast. We clink glasses, each taking a sip of the rich wine. The warmth of the wine seems to melt away the distance between us. She leans against the counter, her eyes sparkling with a plan. You said dinner's off, so maybe lunch is a better option. And I want to keep this private. I'm not risking embarrassment in public. So, you're planning ahead for the possibility of getting angry? I ask, unable to suppress a laugh. Darla narrows her eyes, takes a large gulp of wine, and keeps her composure. She turns her back to me, grabs the Chianti bottle, and pours another splash into my glass. Looking at her back, I see a different Darla, composed, slightly sensitive, as if she's thought a lot about creating this impromptu lunch. I hope you're hungry. I made this lasagna this morning. She turns back, looking confident. Anyway, my lasagna's really good, even if I say so myself. The doorbell rings and Darla asks me to answer. It's my boss. He raises an eyebrow at me. Everything okay? I smile. So far, so good. He nods, stifles a laugh, and heads away. Turning back, I see Darla has laid out food on the table, a meal meticulously prepared. We sit down, talk, and share a few more glasses of Chianti. The conversation continues into the afternoon, and I realize I've laughed more during this encounter than any recent one. Eventually, I stand up. Darla, thanks. This was a nice surprise. The food was great. I'm glad you liked it, she replies, a bright smile on her face. I head toward the door, ready to leave, when she softly calls my name. I turn back, and to my surprise, she walks toward me, leans in, and plants a kiss on my lips, gentle, but it leaves me rooted for a few seconds. We look at each other, both unsure who's more surprised. Dinner's still off the table, right? She asks, her eyes sparkling with challenge. What about tonight? I reply, my heart pounding as I hear myself make the request. Sounds good, 7 p.m., she smiles. She gives me her address, and I start to leave. Again, but we've kissed. Again, and again. It takes me another 10 minutes before I pull out of the lot. As I finally drive away, I see 6 pairs of eyes peering from the windows of the showroom, including my boss. When he sees I've noticed I'm being watched, everyone ducks out of sight, except him. My boss gives me a knowing smile as he holds the door for me. Going well? I just laugh and reply, gotta go home and get ready for tonight's date. He bursts out laughing, and I quickly make my way out of the parking lot. 10 minutes later, I see Darla drive the motorhome out of the dealership. On my way to her place, my phone rings again. Trey Taylor. So you two didn't kill each other, huh? It's Dottie. I hear Robert chuckling in the background. Hi Dottie, guess Robert is listening, right? You bet, it's me. We heard the story from her, and now we want to hear it from you. I laugh. You know a gentleman never tells. Robert snorts. I call that ridiculous. Quiet, Robert, Dottie corrects him, then turns back to me. Trey, Darla was so tense asking to borrow the motorhome, wouldn't say why, but Robert told her she couldn't have it unless she explained. So, she spilled the beans. She was so excited telling us about the lasagna she made for you. When I asked how she knew you liked it, she said, Grandma, I just know. And Trey, she actually blushed. Robert clears his throat. I can't believe I'm saying this, but seeing Darla change has been a relief. She can be a handful, but she's my granddaughter and I hope you'll be good to her. You understand? Yes, sir, I reply, holding back laughter. But you might be jumping the gun a little bit. Robert chuckles. Okay, but Trey, don't hurt her. Darla's had some bad relationships. She's attractive, but men seem to want to use her. That's how she developed that defensive attitude. But there's a sweet Darla in there, it's just hard to find sometimes. I understand, and I won't hurt her, I say. But can you ask her not to hurt me? We both laugh, and I hang up. Immediately, my phone rings again. Trey Taylor? Trey, it's Judy. I sigh, the happiness of the previous moments giving way to tension. Judy, what is it? I think you should know. Jody kicked Stan out of the house for cheating. He came back and beat her up. She's in the hospital with a broken nose and some other injuries. Stan's currently in jail. I'm silent. What about her baby? There never was a baby. She lied to try to hold on to you. She must have lied to my mom. She lied to all of us, Trey. I sigh, feeling all my feelings for Jody dissolving. I'm sorry she's hurt, But that's none of my business anymore. And Stan deserves to be in jail. She's still your wife until the divorce is final? She wasn't my wife the moment she got into that car with him and signed the papers. What happens to her now is no longer my problem. Goodbye, Judy. Darla lives in a gated community. After seeing her grandparents' estate, that wasn't a surprise, but the guard's reaction was. He asks me who I'm here to see, and I tell him, really, and he starts laughing. He laughs as he calls her to see if she's expecting me, and he's still laughing as he opens the gate. I hear him say good luck as I drive through. 15 minutes later, as we pull through the gate to leave, the same guard is still on the phone, but he's looking intently at Darla and me, surprise on his face. He clearly doesn't recognize her returning with the same person she left with earlier that night. Darla picks a steakhouse, and we both order the same thing, medium rare ribeye with blue cheese butter and a large baked potato. My kind of meal, I say, smiling at her. She smiles back, but it's a little awkward as she tries to cut her steak with just one good arm. I offer to cut it for her, but she just laughs, shakes her head resolutely, and continues. Finally, after getting halfway through her meal, Darla gives up, lays her knife and fork down, and takes a large sip of her cocktail. The waiter politely offers to put the rest in a to-go box, but the way he calls it a doggy bag makes us both laugh. When we return, it's the same guard, but this time he has a look of astonishment. Darla chuckles when she sees I've noticed. I guess he's not used to seeing me come back with the same person after a date. Usually I take a cab, she says, winking. Her explanation makes me laugh, and it makes sense. At her place, Darla invites me inside. What can I get you to drink? She asks, standing in her small kitchen. Gin and tonic if you have it, I reply, and we sip in comfortable silence, an unspoken comfort settling over us. After a long pause, Darla stands, moves closer to me, her eyes soft with a hint of shyness. Trey, I'm not very good at this. I don't have a lot of experience, so you'll have to help me, she whispers. I set my drink down and stand. We share a slow, sweet, and deep kiss. My hand gently undoes her buttons, pulls her shirt from her skirt, and lets it slide down her body. I look at her for a moment, and her eyes are half closed, her breath slightly quickened. Even her eyes, when she looks at me, are softening, becoming more tender. The space between us is filled with intimacy that doesn't need to be spoken. After a while, her hand reaches across to undo my buttons, her fingers lightly brushing my skin. Her eyes trace down my chest with a look of anticipation. We become one, our breaths merging with each slow, deep movement. Every moment is gentle and complete, we're in no hurry, savoring each precious second. We drift off to sleep, tangled together, and wake up just before dawn. Darla stirs, opens her eyes, and looks at me, a playful light in her eyes. Trey, I think we need more time to get to know each other. What do you think? Her question doesn't need an answer. We pull each other into another passionate tangle of love. The next morning, at 9 a.m., I call my boss. I'm not coming in today. Why? Still on my date from last night. His laughter comes through the receiver. After breakfast, Darla and I spend more time together, laughing and enjoying each other's company. Things have become less guarded, and a surprising intensity has taken hold. Judy's words come back to me. A light slap or a pull of the hair can amplify the experience. My hand reaches into Darla's soft hair, pulling slightly at the back of her head. She looks at me, her eyes bright, a challenging smile playing on her lips. And in that moment, I realize I've not just started a relationship, but a new journey with Darla, a path where feeling, trust, and passion lead the way.